Okay, let's dive in. Forget everything you think you know about what drives success. Seriously. What if that thing you're always chasing motivation isn't the answer? What if it's, I don't know, actually holding you back?
Yeah, it's a pretty wild starting point, isn't it?
Totally. We're looking at this really interesting narration script today, and it makes this bold claim, like really unconventional.
Uh-huh.
It says maybe what you really need to achieve things isn't motivation, it's anger. Controlled anger.
Anger, yeah. As fuel, the source argues it's actually, like, better than motivation for getting stuff done.
Exactly. So our mission here is pretty straightforward. Let's unpack this source of specific argument. Why do they think anger is this super potent engine for your goals?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is how directly it just dismisses motivation. The source is pretty blunt about it, their main point. Motivation is, frankly, weak. That's their word. It fades. It disappears right when things get tough.
Right, when you actually need it most. It comes and goes.
Precisely. And then they contrast that directly with anger.
And anger, according to them, doesn't fade. It sticks around. It burns, right?
Mhm.
Provides this consistent drive.
Yeah, a relentless drive. But, and this is crucial, we need to be super clear about the kind of anger they mean.
Okay, yeah.
They're definitely not talking about, like, flying off the handle. No rage, no drama.
Not destructive anger.
No. They specify real anger, but controlled anger. Weaponized anger, even. Think of it less like a wildfire and more like a focused laser.
A tool.
A tool, exactly. The kind of internal force they claim can just snap you out of feeling stuck. Maybe even, like the source suggests, get you up at 5 a.m. before the alarm.
Just because you've decided you're done living a certain way.
That's the idea. Pure decision fueled by that controlled anger.
So, okay, where does this fuel come from then? How do you tap into it?
The source points to your past. It argues basically every time you felt dismissed, or someone laughed at you, told you you'd fail.
All those negative moments.
Or even just feeling ignored. That's your power source. They frame being angry, genuinely angry at your current situation, if you're not happy with it, as the very thing you need.
So you take those old hurts or your current frustration and you, what, convert it.
Convert it into intense purpose. That's the core mechanism they describe.
And this energy, this converted anger, it leads to actual action, right? Not just feeling angry.
Absolutely. They argue it translates directly into doing concrete things instead of getting lost scrolling TikTok for, little dopamine hits.
Which is easy to do.
So easy.
Yeah.
This directed anger pushes you past the usual roadblocks, past the excuses, past the pain, the fear.
And makes you do the tangible stuff.
Right. Hitting the gym even when you really don't feel like it. Opening the laptop for that project. Making that awkward phone call. Studying. Just grinding it out consistently.
That really changes the internal conversation, doesn't it? The source highlights this difference.
Totally. If you're relying on motivation, you ask yourself, do I feel like doing this now?
Which often leads to, nah, maybe later.
Exactly. But this anger-fueled mindset, it operates completely differently.
Yeah.
It just says, flat out, I don't care how I feel. This has to be done.
The feeling is sort of irrelevant. The action is everything.
Yeah, the imperative to act overrides the temporary feeling, which, brings up how the source views anger itself.
Oh, so?
They don't see it as inherently bad. They see it as natural, almost like primitive, part of your basic survival kit.
So don't suppress it.
Don't suppress it, control it. That's their whole argument. They even use the gym example pretty powerfully.
Oh, yeah.
Saying it's not just for muscles, it's a place to go and, quote, burn your demons.
Yeah.
To channel that intense energy physically.
Okay. And they give specific targets too, right, for this anger.
They do. Get angry, they suggest, at wasting your time. Get angry at your own laziness if you feel lazy.
Get angry at low standards for yourself.
Exactly. Don't accept mediocrity from yourself. Be angry about it.
So the final instruction is pretty clear then.
Very clear. Take that raw feeling, that anger, sharpen it like a tool, point it where you want to go, and just turn it into relentless action. Now.
And they end with this really strong claim, almost a bit dramatic maybe.
It's quite a statement. They draw this line in the sand. The person who's just motivated, they'll stop eventually when it gets really hard.
But the person fueled by this specific controlled anger,
according to the source,
yeah,
he will not stop until he becomes a legend. That's their closing line. They link that ultimate perseverance directly to this controlled anger.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've really unpacked one source's pretty compelling, definitely controversial argument.
That controlled, weaponized anger coming from past hurts, present dissatisfaction is supposedly this unstoppable force for achievement, way more reliable than just, waiting for motivation to strike.
It really stands in stark contrast to how we usually think about motivation.
Absolutely. And I guess it leaves us, and you listening, with a big question to chew on, doesn't it?
Which,
Well, can using this kind of intense, maybe even uncomfortable energy source actually be the key to that legendary achievement the source talks about?
or does relying on anger, even controlled anger, come with hidden costs? Maybe some downsides that this particular source just doesn't get into.
Exactly. Something to think about.